Hey, I'm Peter Durnan. I'm an English high school teacher here with some friends, and we want to talk about the history and evolution of AP English Language and Composition course, particularly as it relates to its sort of predecessor, the Lit course. So, Don, get us rolling.
Okay, I'm Don Stoll. I'm a composition teacher in a college setting, and I've been doing this for quite a number of years. Um, and what I'm thinking is that the Lang exam, if we look at what the skills that it's asking us to have our students be able to do, is exactly what we try to do, although I'm not sure we're totally successful at it, in a freshman composition course. This is the course that the Lang supposedly replaces. There'll be a difference in sophistication and thinking between what a 18-year-old does and what a 16-year-old does, but essentially they're learning the skills that are necessary to communicate and to fit into the way discourse is handled in an academic setting. So I like the term academic discourse, and I like that to be the mastering academic discourse or being familiar with it and doing a lot of practice of it is what I think the learning outcomes of the Lang course need to be. And we get there because we've now established our own identity separate from the lit test, even though, as Peter will point out, there's a lot of similarity with how the questions are presented and how the rubrics are formulated. And a lot of people both read the lit test and the Lang test. It crosses over. We're all English teachers. But I think in Lang, we're teaching something different. I think we're teaching the skills of argument, academic argument, and we're teaching the skills of being able to be effective observers of how people write, so that translates into our analysis skills. So, David, you want to talk a little bit about where this thing began?
Sure.
So,
Well,
David, I'm gonna interrupt you. I have to, because this is a historical moment for me. We're gonna talk about 2002, and I share the screen with two heroes of mine. 2002, I was in Daytona, a rookie, and I sat in the room with David Jolliffe as we looked at Lincoln's second inaugural, and we read a book, or he read to us a book that I still use in my class every year. Anyway, sorry, I had to interrupt David and interject.
That's okay.
What a pleasant
That's
experience it was for me.
Well, let me talk about 3 dates, and without sounding too much like the ancient mariner, let me say that I began as a reader for the examination in 1992, and in my first year as reader, I mean, the exam was so small at that time they could fit all of us readers into one ballroom at the hotel, and they gave the opening speech and then they closed the dividers, and there we were in our 3 questions. But I actually had come in, believe it or not, 12 years after the AP English Language examination became an examination separate from the lit exam. That happened in 1980, and in 1980, the intellectual ferment in college composition was saying that no longer is freshman composition an intro to lit course where you read short stories and plays and poems and novels, and then write either appreciative or analytic papers about them. But in 1980, people were marching under the banner of teach process, not product, and that composition was now becoming a kind of a public discourse kind of course, soon to become kind of a writing across curriculum course, a course that looked about how students in all fields used writing to create knowledge in their fields, and how people in all walks of life used writing to become knowledge producers in their fields. So the College Board, looking for a way to get to a better test for high school students, not to eliminate the literature exam, but to come up with a new exam in 1980, created what is now become the junior level English language and literature, English language and composition examination. So that's 1980, so I came in 12 years later. So I came in as a reader, eventually ascended to a table leader and a question leader. I got appointed to the test development committee. And then for my many sins, I got appointed to become chief reader. In my first year, I was chief reader designate in 2003, and then I became chief reader in 2004. But the year I want to go back to is 2002, because on 2002, there were two questions on the examination that year that really showed a stark difference between the literature exam and the language exam. The first question, and that was a question that I was the chief reader, the question leader for, and Peter was one of my readers, asked students to do a rhetorical analysis of Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural. Brilliant speech, 707 words, probably took him about 10 minutes to deliver. Oh, for the good old days when inaugural addresses only lasted 10 minutes. And it was a perfect examination, or perfect question to take a look at rhetorical analysis. Who's the speaker? What's the context? What's the exigence? Who's the audience? What's the purpose? What's the message? Students really did tremendously well on this examination. But curiously, on the same examination, there was another question. Remember, this was prior to the synthesis question. So we had an analysis question, an argument question, and a wildcard question. It was question 2. And this was asked students to do an analysis of an excerpt from Virginia Woolf's memoir called Moments of Being. And you see it's a memoir, it's a lovely piece of writing about going out fishing with her brother, Toby, maybe Thoby. The prompt is write an essay in which you analyze how Woolf uses language to convey the lasting significance of these moments from her past. For whom? For whom? What's the context? What's the purpose? And those of us on the test development committee that year, many of us who had training, academic training in rhetoric, said, you know, that's a very good question for a lit exam. That's really not a tremendously good question for a language exam, because it really has nothing to do with rhetorical situation, with how does someone craft a text to affect meaning, purpose, and effect for readers. It just didn't belong. So this began then to make an evolution on the examination to having texts that really asked students to do more rhetorical analysis, and even to do arguments, which asked them to analyze internally, at least, the rhetorical effectiveness of their own arguments. So I think that after 2002, the exam moved more and more towards becoming an exam in the theory and practice and analysis of rhetoric than it was in the analysis of literary and literature and the appreciation of literature. The other thing that happened in 2002 was a very interesting bit of persuasion going on. Some of you might know that one of our major antagonist organizations in AP is a group called the Council of Writing Program Administrators. These are people who either currently are directors of college composition programs or have been so in the past or want to be in the future. And they are not completely antagonistic to AP, but in general, they think that AP takes their very best students away. AP is a project that puts into the high school what ought to be happening at the college level. So we've had to have an interesting relationship with the Council of Writing Program Administrators. And prior to my becoming involved with the AP examination, I had been on the board of directors of the Council of Writing Program Administrators. So in the summer of 2002, I went off to the Council of Writing Program Administrators summer conference in Park City, Utah, and I literally got cornered, not figuratively, but literally got cornered by two very influential people in college composition, writing assessment. And both of them said to me, A, we don't like the fact that you're working with AP. And I said, well, no, AP is it's a good project. It's a good course. It really gets students ready for college. But they said, okay, we don't like the fact that there's this end of year test into which it's the basket in which all the eggs are placed. And they say, if there's going to be a test, then you need to have something on your test that shows that students know how to incorporate secondary source material into their own arguments and how to recognize what secondary sources do. So that in the summer of 2002 was then the impetus that gave rise to what has eventually now come the synthesis examination, question 1. To the credit of the College Board said, the AP English Test Development Committee and very many influential people in college composition and high school composition, you need to spend 5 years doing professional development, getting teachers ready to teach the synthesis examination before it comes on the exam in 2007. So in 2007, it came on the exam. It was tremendously successful. I always want to pat teachers on the back, say you do a great job teaching students about how to incorporate secondary source material into their own arguments, because every year, the question that scores the highest mean is the synthesis examination. Students always do better on that than they do on the argument and the analysis. So that's my little sort of historical view from 1980 to 2007 and beyond. I've remained as a reader, and I remain as a consultant to the College Board and doing AP Summer Institutes. So that's my little sort of historical thumbnail about what I've lived through.
So David, the next time we do this, we need to take a closer look at synthesis, I think, and
Okay.
the impetus and you know, the evolution of that question. Don, you're the man. Thank you both. I'm going to end this recording.